Gray Zone Warfare, one of the largest attempts to dethrone the kings of the genre, just had its biggest update yet. This is an open world PvEVP with 3 teams of 16 posed against one another in a fight for control of territory within Southeast Asia. You dive into the jungle solo or with your team in a massive map that has no loading screens. There is no raid timer, there is no extract, there's your missions, the map, your buddies, or maybe just you alone. When Gray Zone's alpha tests launched, it was placed precisely during a timely hiccup by the Tarkov devs, who had just launched a $250,000 edition that included features that were promised to the gamers who had already supported the most by buying the existing highest version. This left many Tarkov players seeking refuge in a game that could replace Tarkov, and soon after, Gray Zone and Arena Breakout would try their best to take that stage. Gray Zone's premise was immense and exciting. A giant map with no raid timer, 3 teams, no loading screens. On paper, that sounds amazing. Battlestate had been talking for years about how their eventual goal was to have Tarkov be an open world where all maps would truly be connected, and here Gray Zone was actually doing it. But in reality, these cool features had issues not only by themselves, but when combined together caused even more. Issues that I feel I was alone in calling out mere hours into the test and in my videos after the launch. Things like, why am I on a team if my task system is a linear personal quest line where all of the tasks are most efficiently completed when playing alone? How am I supposed to fight players when they can now respawn and be back at my position within mere minutes? How am I supposed to move across the map when the enemy team can see the exact coordinate of the 3 reasonable options I have to land my helicopter at, meaning they can just split 3 people to each one and control an entire section of my map? These 3 things, contradicting progression gameplay, a non-conclusive PvP loop, and a lack of reasonable safe transport throughout the entire map, combine these 3 things with issues like poor performance on mid-tier systems, clunky enemy AI, arcadey movement, and a bit of technical issues, and I'm pretty sure this is why the game lost 94% of its players in 2 months. But now it's back. Do note, for transparency, they sent me to their office in Brno, the Czech Republic. I got to shoot guns in Europe, which was really cool. I got to go look at cool churches and play their game for 2 hours in their office for a live stream. I didn't get paid anything. I'm not required to make this video or say game good, but they've kindly covered that entire very nice trip, including a few Czech beers. Now, with that said, they've given me an early look at their Winds of War update, including a massive overhaul to their PvP with capturable outposts, dynamic weather, a brand new squad task system, major task improvements, new weapons and gear, and a really impressive set of quality of life improvements across the whole board. If you missed the last smaller update too, not only did dynamic weather get added since launch, but also a day-night cycle with flashlights, lasers, night vision goggles, and beautiful UE5 sunrises. Firstly, I will start with something good. I will admit, just like how the world was the most impressive part before, it still is. The weather is probably the best I've ever seen in a game. When it's heavily raining in Gray Zone, I've never seen better rain in a video game. Puddles on the ground form over time, areas get flooded entirely, the water will find like cracks in the rocks and dirt and look like it's flowing down them.
It's gonna be nice. Oh, look at the puddling on the floor, dude.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
Look at
the water on the ground, like, it finds creases in rocks and then makes water flow down the creases on the rocks. That all flows really well into my next note, that this is probably the most demanding PvP game I've ever played. It brings my 4090 down to 40 FPS sometimes when I'm aiming down scope. Chunking dips in frame rate when riding even just the heli around. Although the frames are framey, it is slightly better than when I last played, I think, because it's been a while. And this game has absolutely a unique vibe when trekking silently through the jungle. There's just nothing like it. It is a high-end game to run, but it does feel great. But now, there's a whole new system that changes the gameplay loop of PvE and PvP drastically, good and bad. There's a bunch of new points throughout the map which can be captured at random by any of the 3 teams. Once you gain control of one, inside, you go inside like the center of the cop, and you press tab, and boom, you're in your stash. Neat, you don't have to go back to base. You can buy from traders here, you can turn in or receive task items here, and as a side note, you can actually accept and complete quite a bit of your tasks outside in the world now, as long as they don't require picking up an item or something, meaning you don't have to immediately go back to base after each and every quest. Especially in the starter town, that speeds up that monotonous progression a lot, and that's one of the things I feel that they really took advantage of this persistent open world formula with, and for PvE flow, I like that a lot. But the worst part about about these cops is that if your team gets attacked at one,
Gator is secured and fully under our control.
you get notified by this commander guy who's louder than gunshots screaming in your ear. Seriously, look at the wavelength. That's him. That's gunshots and that's him. This is as you're listening for a player running by you or you're fighting at a different objective across the map. I don't know how that got past the QA team. Not only does it notify you of any capturing of cops, but it also notifies you of when your team is just shot at or shooting at an enemy anywhere on the map. Every single time. He was so loud that even the developers themselves are putting memes up about it.
These are all AK-12s.
And excuse me, I have a radio operator to silence.
Luckily, you won't experience this, at least in the same way. After we gave them immediate feedback, they added a ton of parameters to make sure that you're only getting notified when you're close to those alerts. I haven't experienced this yet because these changes are only coming when the build goes live for all players. When one team makes contact with another, there's this alert feature which also puts a zone marker on the map. It's roughly a 200-meter radius, and it lets you know where this radio call is coming from. It reveals the general location of that enemy player, even from a silent long-range sniper shot that nobody could hear. It kind of kills the mystery of ranged combat and removes the thrill of not knowing where a deadly shot came from. Like when you take a shot that lands, the game rewards you with a big marker over your head for the enemy team to hunt you down with. Multiple times I had people that were attacking us or me attacking another group that easily got doxxed by those markers. And in my opinion, ambiguity is just everything for like solo stealthy play. So I just wasn't the biggest fan of this. Instead of giving these instant precise pings, maybe let the players mark suspected positions like in squad, which would be rewarding the aware and communicative teams over giving them automated alerts.
I think I'm gonna watch these fields and the LZ points.
We're taking heavy fire.
They just shot at you?
I didn't hear anything.
It says PvP zone to your southeast. What? PvP zone to your southeast? Who's over there?
Wait, does it paint an area when you get shot at on the map?
Yeah, instantly.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely heard nothing.
Now, on the other hand, these cops are great for PvE. If you die, you can respawn to the closest captured cop and walk back into the AO from close by. This works for PvE, but in PvP, it's a different story. When I first reviewed the game, I said a big downside to the PvP loop was that when you successfully killed another player in battle, they weren't really dead. They simply could respawn back at base, re-kit, and fly to a nearby LZ within a couple minutes. On average, when I took someone out, I could give myself roughly 5 minutes before they could possibly be back if they tried their best. This let me have at least a little bit of time to secure the area, grab their loot, and move away from the hotspot. If they landed close, I'd likely also hear their helicopter, making it even easier to avoid them. I don't like this meta because it's a bit weird, and it's worse now. With the new system, you don't have to fly back from main. You can respawn at the closest cop and rush back to your body in sometimes under 2.5 minutes. This stinks, especially when it's like a cop v cop fight between teams. The moment you kill someone, you can't take any time to secure the area around them safely and check if they had teammates. You're gonna have to YOLO to the body, yoink everything, get out within seconds after killing them to probably be safe. This creates a meat grinder of terrible combat with no flow, frontline, or conclusion. You'll die a lot in these flip-flop firefights where someone kills a player, then that player respawns and runs back with an M4 and 2 mags and nothing to lose, sprinting and jumping around until they reach their main body.
I'm trying to get him to move.
Oh my gosh, your jump shooting is so funny, dude. The average lifespan in these fights when playing aggressively and trying your best to win is maybe like 4 minutes. When players can so easily respawn and be back in a couple minutes to scavenge bodies, as gear is being traded so chaotically in the fight, players stopped caring for their lives, and the fights, in my opinion, fell very flat. The areas of forest or jungle around the cops were just littered with bodies from like waves of respawns from each team. Now, big changes coming through in the version that is what you're going to be able to play. The devs said to us that they're disabling respawns on the public build if a cop is contested, but that's only when players are on the point contesting it or suppressing the AI there. But also, to help with PvP, this update added armbands that are only visible to your team, and in the version you'll play, these have IR glowy bits to help with IFFing your buddies in the spooky dark jungle at night. Again, only visible to your buddies, not the enemy. I like it. A lot of streamers have also suggested that nearby teammates could also appear as blue dots on your compass up at the top of the screen, which I also vote for. Back to cops though. I'm sorry, this is a big part of the video because it's the biggest part of the update. The AI alone were so bad at defending the cops that players with just a little bit of experience dealing with them would wipe a cop in under 20 seconds and capture it without a sweat. Then once they left, another player group would just come and take it back, flip-flop, snip, snap, snip, snap.
Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap.
Combine that with the movement that we mentioned days after launch of this game that rewards players for sprinting around, doing jump shots in the dark to distract the enemy team, and literally mag dumping players while midair. I just wasn't a fan of the cop warfare experience here. It felt less intense, extremely less strategic, repetitive, and just gamey compared to the usual fight in DayZ or Tarkov. In the end, defending a cop just does nothing but waste your time. You will die from the enemies freely respawning and running back aimlessly, and on the version that you're gonna play, the moment your AI are suppressed at your cop, you won't be able to respawn there for a good bit of time. You'll have to walk or fly back. And that also leads me into my second issue of the game since launch. If you're selecting an LZ, it should be a field, and then you select what part of the field you want to land in.
Yeah.
Yes, it would mean more tracks that they would have to create, but like this 1x1 meter spot where you land and the enemies know where you're going, if they see you flying overhead towards a certain direction, that is just instantly, I'm out of the immersion. It's a game. It's a gaming mechanic. This is a enemy bird coming into Delta 2?
Yep.
LZ camping, which is still prevalent and gamey as ever. It is maybe 20% less common with the addition of the ability to respawn and rearm at cops, but especially when defending one, players will be flying in to attack constantly, hoping that you aren't ready. Most of the time, we were, especially when the LZs got as close as 200 meters from our cop. We'd be just chilling there in our stash and then just hear rotors chopping overhead, and then we'd know to immediately run south to intercept them, and you can guess how that ended for them every single time. Heli inbound, Mike 3.
Contact made with enemy PMC. Engaging now.
All of my gear seems to be back.
Oh, he's going back to it. Heli. Checking hostile heli. On you, Fu, on you.
Okay, landing now.
Yep. I'm using you as bait.
I see them.
I see him. He's dead.
One dead.
The fact that my player still knows the exact location of where the enemy bird is going to land down to the square meter, and that player on the bird can't do anything to evade a hot LZ once boarding his heli 5 minutes earlier, is just by far the dumbest mechanic in the game. It seriously takes me out of any immersion almost entirely by itself and leaves no room for strategy on your method of inserting into a mission, and it's the first thing you do every time you play the game. Now, with every problem in this video, I want to offer a solution or an idea for a solution, maybe in case someone didn't think about it or something. The designers are going to hate me by the end of this video, and you can hit me in real life when I get back to check next time or something. I don't know. I met everybody that I'm talking to in this video, and they were very nice, to be fair. Devs, maybe you could create multiple groups of LZs. Let's say if there's like 25 LZs currently in the game, you could maybe make like 75 more. Man, they're gonna hang me. But then you, at random, give each of the 3 teams a random assortment of LZs that also shift every hour, right? This would make each team have different LZs, force players to not know if the LZs they've memorized because they're experienced are even active or not, and make it very difficult to predict a fight because every hour the LZs would trade between teams. Overall, whatever system you guys are eventually going to settle on, I should simply not know exactly where an enemy heli is going to land if I see it flying in a certain direction. The heli currently also just lands you in the middle of giant open fields. Ask any crew chief in Vietnam, you don't do this. You pick a side of the field that you deem is safest in the context of the mission so that your troops can get to cover quickly. Most of the times, if this was without like Kaz or something, MACV-SOG operators would even drop a bomb in the middle of the jungle to kill trees and make a tiny clearing, and then they would do a tiny little LZ where they would fly like a Huey right above it and then fast rope the dudes down because it was such a small LZ, and that's how they did it. They didn't land in the middle of rice paddies. That is certain death. Good books, in case you want to read them about Vietnam warfare, is Low Level Hell. What other ones do I have? Saw Codename Dynamite and Across the Fence by John Stryker Meyer. All really cool books that basically describe hundreds of moments like these that you would never do. In my video, not even a week after release, I mentioned an idea where you'd have a procedural system to tell your pilot to land at specific spots within given zones that were considered LZs. Or maybe you'd be able to tell your pilot to cancel the landing upon taking fire. Now this would create like a whole need for a procedural system where the pilot could like break off of the rail at any point, and that's more complex. But I think the strategy or method that I mentioned above, where you just create a lot of LZs and then trade them in between teams, is not too complex compared to that. And we're still sitting here with LZ camping being a big problem, so maybe that solution could work better. I mean, the system is so messy, right? That the game currently has a hidden 5-second invulnerability timer right after feet touch the ground, with zero indicator to the player who's defending their cop or their friends by ambushing that landing player. Great mechanic. Loved discovering it on the official stream.
Okay.
Go.
Did you see him go side to side? Yeah, he's doing the friendly wiggle and died.
Okay, that's enough about LZs. Remember earlier, I had mentioned that the game also featured the Night Ops update in November of last year. This added NVGs, IR lasers, and they're pretty cool. They look totally unique and are, in my opinion, one of the best attempts at recreating that feeling of running Nightvision. But unfortunately, the game's nighttime is currently so bright that the nods are currently useless. I mean, unless you're running a really bad monitor and you've got the Texas sun hitting your face through a window, you're better off just squinting at the screen or gamma abusing with the game's in-game gamma abuse slider. Outside the game, I did this with my OBS in a couple of seconds worth of filters, and ooh, it's bad, dude. All the detail is left in those darker areas and you can just raise it right up. Daisy fixed this by having grain. So things that are lit up don't get grainy, but like the dark areas do, and if you raise that, it just turns into that. Rust also does it in a certain way. They just turn everything like dark blue, and so if you gamma abuse Rust, it's really hard to do it effectively. In Arma 3, for example, in our ops, we actually just make it so dark, usually whenever there's like PvP, that you just can't gamma abuse because everything is literally the color black. Everything but the horizon will be the color black. It's awesome. The tubes in Gray Zone have this weird 1.5x zoom to them that isn't real to life at all. There's also weird detached movement in the tube when either moving around or aiming down your sight. And I'm not talking about the housing movement here, by the way. That's fine. I'm talking about the image in here should stay the same as the area behind it, no matter what this tube is doing. It should just be this, but brighter and green. The biggest problem as well is that they're just too grainy for full moon nights we have in the game currently. I have probably 1,000+ hours under Nightvision for anything from hog hunting.
I'm a little concerned I may have woken someone up.
To airsoft, to driving dirt bikes in West Texas. These are like looking through my 1980s era PVS 5s, where running around with one of those on probably carries a non-zero chance of you tripping and falling into the back rooms at 3 in the morning. In-game, these are high-end PVS 31s with likely really expensive high-tech tubes inside. If you've ever looked through unfilmed White Foss tubes before, it's insane. I run some nice tubes and think that mine are great, but what modern operators using these things would be comparable to turning on the sun during a full moon like it's daytime now. The only place where modern Nightvision still gets this grainy, like we see in Gray Zone, is in very low illum areas. Like if there's thick clouds with no light pollution that totally filters out all the starlight. Combine that with a jungle canopy, and yeah, you'll get moments where even good Nightvision can't see. That's when things like illuminators come in handy. Those laser light combo PEC boxes on the front of our rifles in Gray Zone both laze and illuminate targets for operators in low light, but operators use them sparingly as any amount of lasers or light emission can be seen by other bad guys. In real life, I can push a pressure pad on the IR device to momentarily activate it, and as soon as I release it, it turns off. This is useful for quickly acquiring a bad guy with your laser, taking him out, but deactivating your light as soon as you're done so someone else can't have the time to trace the laser back to you. In Gray Zone, you can't do this. You can select between IR or white light, which is cool, that's rare in games, or IR invisible laser, which is poggers in the chat, as my gamer friend Joshua Guz would say, but there's a delay on your PEC box or any tac light you use where you can't hold to activate, but only press to toggle it. And the toggle has this really annoying like 1 second cooldown for no reason that makes it a chore to quickly activate and then deactivate. So before I went on a night op in the game, I was going to run a variable optic on my rifle and passively look through it to keep my signature reduction at a maximum against other players. I knew it'd probably be a little tough to use the LPVO through nods, but a quick test showed me the LPVO just fully blurs my view when looking through it, even at 1x.
Which is something you may think is correct until you have night vision goggles and AR-15 and a target at 100 meters.
This doesn't happen. Yes, it's not the best way to aim at night. It's not great, but passive aiming, even through sights that aren't in EOTech, is very possible. Especially at 1x zoom, LPVOs are okay. This actually gets better the bigger of a scope that you go with, because just more light is coming through the scope the larger it is. So even with 3x on a bigger caliber.
308. Now I'm gonna put this up to 18 and see if I can make the same shot. Yep.
In reality, shots in the forest at real people are a bit trickier than a shot on a big steel plate 30 minutes after the sunset while the sky is still like bright with twilight. The longer zoom you set your scope to, the less light you'll see through it. So it will be darker. It will be a dark image. You might just not see the target behind the crosshair. You might have a rainy night fogging up your optic and nods, just a bit too much to see anything. But this, for a night vision dedicated update, this actually isn't that realistic. I get that this is all UE5 picture-in-picture scope science, and it's tough to remake this stuff in a game. But if you want the night vision in the game to be useful, then make it like real life, where night is dark and night vision makes it less so. I eventually found myself, even me, yes, the night vision nerd of all nerds, not using NVGs, as I just felt like they downgraded my awareness in almost all circumstances. This is apparently a full moon that's just non-stop full moon. The moon cycle, the moon phase is not really in the game yet. But also, if this is a full moon, these night vision goggles need to almost be as clear as real daytime. They need to almost have no grain at all, except for maybe the darkest of areas under jungle canopy.
I was just messing around with the motes. You can do it. Look at this.
Enough about night vision. A little bit of good though. To balance it out, the task system has gained a massive upgrade, and that is these little squad tasks. You can squad off with 3 buddies and then accept a mission that'll take you to random objectives across the map. I took a few buddies to a sawmill where we needed to locate like 3 or 4 beacons and activate them, and then leave the area at a certain position. Nothing was directly marked other than a point of interest where the beacons were hidden, so it was up to us on how we wanted to approach, take out the guards, move in, and find our stuff we needed to find. I think although these missions are maybe a little dry, they could easily add some higher difficulty options and give better rewards over time with future versions of the system. I kind of wish the whole game was just like these, like raids that I could sign up for with my buddies so that I could play with my team in my team-based shooter and not have to feel like I'm missing out on cool content by not touching this single-person linear quest line. This single feature is what I was asking for mainly since launch, a way to play and progress with my friends, no matter how far forwards or backwards they are behind my progression. Yeah, good part of the update, solid. That fixes a big part of the game. So where does all this put us with Grayzone a year later? Let's look back at the 3 things I felt were the reasons that Grayzone didn't take off at launch, and if Madfinger has solved any of them. Contradicting progression gameplay. Now you can progress with your buds, so that's marked off, but I would like to see this go further with a more interesting or challenging quests that don't feel randomly generated. Like I said before, it's a solid start. The non-conclusive PvP loop. I still think that this is the case, and cops almost make PvP worse. I know PvP is not the focus of Grayzone, it's a PvE main course with PvP as the dessert to give the PvE experience some spicy flavor. I'm going to say PvE a million times in this script, but also PvP seems to be the focus of this update, and I don't think it works well. Find some way to make these cops less flip-floppy, make them have a long cooldown after capture. I stole that idea from Big Fry. Make more AI patrols around them, make the AI more difficult, make them more solid, make the fights for them require more than just one person. Give us rewards for capturing them and make a capture of one of them a big experience and not just something that you go up and hold F on a laptop and then the place spawns people that appear out of nowhere. Currently, that system feels like a bad, like, capture the island PvP scenario on Arma 3. It feels like something that was scripted to just be like a cheap feature in a game mode. It doesn't feel like this should be part of the official experience in Gray Zone Warfare quite yet. It still feels very simple. And the last one is a lack of reasonable safe transport throughout the entire map. This is moderately better with PvE gameplay, as after capturing a cop, I can stash loot and come rearm, instead of relying on LZs to fly to and from my main base. But the PvP gameplay surrounding cops still relies heavily on use of the heli, and this makes the issue still as prevalent as before. And smaller things too. How is the optimization? It's better. It's still not great. I constantly switch from a scope just to have better frames at times, because when you scope in, your frames drop like 40 FPS. And there's lots of just random lag spikes here and there. How is the audio? I think that they did a lot with the environment, especially day and night have very distinct soundscapes. Weather sounds great. I don't know if I've seen a thunderstorm yet in game, but rain is nice and makes me feel all warm and fuzzy, just like I feel like when getting caught in a torrential downpour in real life. Is anyone else like this? I like rain. Like, I like getting muddy and wet and not seeing anything. Am I weird? Should I sign?
Okay, giving up. There's so much loot in that jungle, by the way.
Okay, my last MP7. I am running out again. I'm grabbing headset this time.
I think footstep audio, both my own and enemy footsteps, was really dry and repetitive though. I'd like to see more sound samples of footsteps to make footsteps sound more dynamic and hear things like sticks crack farther away and not know if I'm hearing a person or if that's just like leaves crunching in the distance because of wind. But also I'd like the ability to go pretty much silent when sneaking up close to someone, because right now the game kind of just rewards whoever sits still, because if you try to sneak around slowly, you're still going to be audible in the jungle. In the jungle, like a lot of the jungle is wet and damp, and so there's not a lot of dry sticks and leaves to step on, and a lot of times when it's wet and damp outside, you can sneak like big time. Like even big plants, like big jungle plants can rub up against you, and because they're wet and damp, they like bend more than they scratch, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm just crazy. I like being outside when it's raining. Whenever it like rained when I was little and we would go airsofting, we all loved it because that means that we could sneak up on people, because otherwise you'd have those dry oak leaves that are like the waxy ones in Texas and just crunch. I'm going crazy. Gunshots sound really bad. I mean, anything outside of my own gun sounds bad. You'll commonly hear reports before the cracks of a rifle, which is the inverse of what it should be, or hear a gunshot that sounds like it's 50 meters out, but it's actually like 400, just because there's like no difference between the gunshot audio at range or close. I can hear gunshots out here to the north.
Eyes up, blue forces nearby.
Maybe you're just a better gamer. You heard a gunshot now?
There's absolute shots.
Yeah,
100% shots.
there's shots 3, 4, 5.
God, I didn't hear those at all until just now. Like
yeah, I had to leave the base, then I can hear them.
I hear them like they're right in front of me. You can't hear suppressed rifles past like really low range, like 200 meters. And unsuppressed rifles you can't hear past like 600. It's really just weird. You don't hear distant firefights like at all. You hear like loud gunshots like they're right beside you, but then they're just a little quieter when they're like far away. Everything about gunshots is probably the worst part of the audio-visual experience here. And I think that was the same when the game first launched, too. I think we had a lot of complaints about gunshots. Mortars landing sound like firecrackers. Reverb outdoors doesn't really sound realistic at all. I didn't really have like an immersive firefight with good sound in the 15 hours or 20 hours that I played. But all in all, I think it's a good update, but Gray Zone still has a lot of work to do, and I'm surprised how much feedback we've had to give that wasn't caught by QA testers. I mean, in my 20 hours spent playing this version, I found a glitch that allowed me to see through the jungle and spot enemies hundreds of meters away through any foliage between me and them. And I can replicate this almost at any time with about 10 seconds of doohickying with my game. Don't worry, I sent this to devs immediately and shall abuse this by myself until it is patched. Combine that with the insanely intrusive commander guy in our version yapping about objectives miles away constantly, scopes that don't work right, night vision still being useless after being in the game for half a year now, gamma abuse being a literal in-game option, it's a long road for Gray Zone until it's done. But I had a moment. The last day of recording, I jumped into the jungle solo. I took a flight to a nearby enemy cop and cleared it out. I captured it for my own team. I went to the resort known as Midnight Sapphire, and I ran into a multi-layered line of defensive sentries that I had to tactically remove as I inched closer and closer to the building. And this was no easy fight. A teammate nearby pushed the opposite side almost at the same time, and we met in the building. It was kind of scary looting the building and clearing it, as I also knew that teammates were inside, but it was cool to hear like his in-game VoIP and kind of figure out where he was based off of that.
I'm gonna go outside. Go ahead and shoot everybody here.
Okay. There was a lot of loud shooting and screaming inside that was a little chaotic. So I looted a lot of the bodies, I found keys and explored the place, and I used those keys I found to open up nearby houses that a YouTuber Nice Guy was showing me how to do. So he like brought me over to these houses and we checked them out. There was some cool loot in those. And then I split my way back to the main building to go loot it some more because I wanted to go make sure I got everything. And then I got a message. Nice Guy had told me that some enemy had landed to the east at an LZ, and it gave me this sudden realization that we weren't alone. This wasn't just like a ghost recon match, you know? There was a big threat that was potentially coming my way. So I snuck out of the area back to my cop. I was able to unload my loot safely and exited without a scratch, well, minus the vomiting because my stomach at one point got blasted onto the wall behind me. But I had a moment where I said, you know what? I get it. I get Gray Zone. I didn't even have player contact, but the whole situation got a lot more intense the moment that there was a mix of bad actors within my area of operations texted to me from a trusted source. Just that little message was cool. I didn't feel that last time. I didn't feel that at launch, but I felt it this time. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more Autistic Nightvision trivia, and I'll see you in the next one. Did you know that the PVS-7 was made a single tube system because the American government deemed Generation 3 tubes too expensive to be put into dual tubes like the older Gen 2 PVS-5s? In the end, the United States put crappy night vision on our own soldiers because there's nothing better than budget cutting the people risking their lives for you.